Hi, everyone. This is Scott Nybakken for Dynamite Comics, and I'm here with author and self-proclaimed superfan Tom Sniegoski to talk about his new series, The Herculoids, coming to stores in February. Tom, thanks for joining us on the channel.
Thank you for having me. Give me a chance to talk about the Herculoids again.
Yes. So you've already admitted in print that you watched the original animated series when it first aired in the late 60s, and you were immediately captivated.
Yes.
Uh, what was it about the show that gripped the imagination of a young Tom?
You know what? I think it has an awful lot to do with the fact that I think I was born a monster kid.
Mm.
So anything that had that opportunity to have monsters as like main characters in a storyline was just absolutely fascinating to me. And there was actually, you could see where like a little bit of even like the whole concept of like superheroics come into it too, like the super team and things like that, because I'm a huge superhero guy too, as far as like my other comic work and stuff like that. But yeah, I think mainly it was like the fact that here were monsters and they were good guys and they were fighting other monsters and aliens and things like that. Yeah, just fascinating to me. I can actually remember sitting on the floor in front of the TV set. That was a long time ago.
Yep. Like so, building on that, can you give us a brief rundown of the setting and the premise for the Herculoids and what your new
Yeah,
take on it?
it's kind of an interesting premise because it's about a family basically. It's a three humanoids, uh, you know, Tara, Dorno, Xander, and these strange animals that aren't animals. That's one of the things that I'm kind of addressing in the comic is that they're animalistic. They're kind of like the different types of creatures, but they're not dumb. They're not straight animals. And that's a egu, which is a rock ape, and tundra, which is kind of like this rhinoceros triceratops thing that shoots explosive rocks out of its head. Uh, Zoc, which is like a laser dragon, and Gloop and Gleepa, which are these two shape shifting creatures that are kind of fascinating. So all these things together it just made this absolutely amazing. And I mean, I think what another thing too is they look so cool.
Mm.
That
Yeah.
I think that was another ginormous hook for a young Tommy, was
Mhm.
that they just look amazing.
And so the Herculoids is the third big title that we've launched, like featuring classic Hanna-Barbera characters, with the other two being Space Ghost and Johnny Quest.
Yeah.
Uh, what do you think it is that these Hanna-Barbera shows have that keeps them so intriguing and compelling even after all these years?
Well, one of the main things, like what I just said, the look, the design of the show, of the characters, and that was basically Alex Toth was the name of the
Yeah.
artist designer who worked in comics and stuff like that. The stuff, you just look at it and it's immediately identifiable. For one thing, you just like and you like it. There's a simplicity to it, but at the same time, there's just the simplicity and complexity. I don't even know how to describe. I'm not an artist, so I don't even know how to describe it. But there is just something incredibly appealing to the eye about all his designs on Johnny Quest, on Space Ghost, all of that stuff in the Hercules, especially because of the various monsters and things like that. Yeah, the look is just fascinating.
Yeah, and obviously the artist for any comic book, but for this one especially is key. And is it like for a imaginative alien setting like Planet Amzot? Uh,
Yeah.
so, what are the strengths that your artist on the series, Craig Russo, is bringing to the title, and how
You
has
know
the
what?
been
What
looking so far?
what's amazing about Craig is I've worked with Craig on a bunch of other projects, and I'm working with him on a bunch of other projects, and he has such I mean, there's a very Toth-like quality to his art style. There's a simplicity. Like when you first look at it, there's a simplicity to it. But then as you get into his storytelling, there's a complexity. So there's like he was like the first person that I thought of when I found out that I got the gig to write the book. Craig was like the first person that I thought of because he gives you that sense of nostalgia. Like when you look at the artwork, you're immediately kind of transported back to like the images from the television on the television. But at the same time, his storytelling kind of takes it in a slightly different direction, and my storytelling takes it in a slightly different direction. But yeah, he's gonna give people who have a view of that show in their head, like a mental image in their head, when they open that comic, they will be back in that place. I can guarantee it. It's great. I love what he's doing with it.
And unlike a lot of the other franchises from the era, there have actually been very few Herculoids comic book stories published since the animated show came out.
Yeah.
And this is actually going to be the first time that they've had their own dedicated series.
Yep.
All of which invites the questions: why do you think that was the case? And then, are you ready for the heavy responsibility that making comic history always brings?
You know what? It's funny. Since I started in comics, which was a long freaking time ago, like in the 90s, I've always said, why isn't there a Herculoids comic? Why? And I would actually look to see who held the license, and it was DC for most of the whole Warner DC thing, and they held it most of the time. And anytime I would meet an editor from DC or somebody who was like ingrained in DC, I would say, why aren't you doing more with these characters? Why? And they would all go, I don't know. But at the same time, when I would meet with other writers and artists and stuff, every single one of them was a huge Herculoids fan. So it's kind of like I could never quite get why they hadn't invested more heavily into doing something with these characters. I mean, I think there were a couple of Gold Key comics, like in the maybe late 60s, early 70s, and then there was some like Cartoon Network did some comics.
They were in like anthology titles, like Hanna-Barbera, two super TV heroes and TV.
Yeah. And then I think the last time we saw them was Jeff Parker did something. Was it Future Quest?
Yeah.
That was pretty good.
Future Quest, yeah.
Yeah, that was a lot of fun. Future Quest was a lot of fun. I found that the other stuff almost it's almost like they didn't take the materials seriously. It was kind of very light and kind of fluffy and really not much to it. They didn't really do anything in regard to like expanding the world or expanding the universe or expanding with the characters or things like that. But Jeff did way more with it in the Future Quest book than anybody has done.
Yeah, and you have actually talked about one of the challenges, of course, is that a bunch of the characters don't speak. And
that was like a light dawns on Marblehead moment when I was like, wait a minute, a lot of the characters that I'm super excited about to get into their heads, they don't talk. Oh crap! But at the same, I just finished writing issue 3, and I'm finding that that's not that big of a problem, especially since I can lean on Craig. Craig has such a great visual style, and he has a great like body language and facial expressions and stuff like that, and crazy ass sound effects and things like that. I'm able to kind of like get their points across to each other, because I can't imagine that they speak the same language if they're different species and stuff. So but they do all understand each other, which is kind of cool.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was like when I first got the gig, I was kind of like, I was so excited, and I was like, oh crap, they don't talk.
And without getting too spoilery, can you tell us a little bit about what happens in the first issue, like the plot?
Well, it's funny. The first what I decided to do is I had gone back and I had watched a bunch of the old episodes again to kind of get a feel for like what they did. And there was a lot of repetition in the cartoons, which is fine. Repetitions is like a nice warm blanket. I have no problem with that at all. But I kept coming back to the fact that they want this planet. There are alien races and who are on the planet. They want something about this planet. There's something about this planet that everybody wants a piece of, and the Herculoids are protecting the planet. So the first story arc basically leans on that like, what is it about this planet that people want, and why is it so desirable to them that they want it? So I lean a little heavily on that in the first 2 issues to kind of give like a good example of the kind of stories that I'll be telling with that thought in mind. Like what is special about Amzot that the people would be willing to risk their lives to get there and take it, so to speak. Good luck taking it. Because the Herculoids will not deal with that stuff well. But yeah, that's the first storyline, and that kind of sets in motion a bigger thread that runs through the first year of a hidden threat that's like awakened by an incident that happens in the first 2 issues. So
excellent.
yeah.
Finally, do you think we might see some guest appearances from other Hanna-Barbera characters as the series progresses?
You know what? I was talking with David Pepos, who writes Space Ghost, and both of us have said we want to do a crossover. We want to do a Space Ghost Hercules crossover. Nobody said anything to us yet, but we're game if they want to do it. If they want to do it, I would be all over that.
I think we all want to see that. Hopefully.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I think that would be ridiculously fun. Yeah.
All right. Well, Tom, thanks for joining us, and thanks to everyone for watching. The Herculoids #1 will arrive from somewhere out in space into stores in February, so be sure to pre-order it now. And follow Dynamite Comics on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and X to hear more about all of our upcoming releases. Tom, thanks again.
Thank you. Pre-order.